components of video games are boss battles, and what happens to be one of my most favorite franchises ever, Sonic the Hedgehog, happens to have a plethora of bosses from the beginning, Sonic the Hedgehog 1, all the way up to the most current game, Sonic X Shadow Generations. And in today's video, I'm going to be ranking those 11 bosses from Sonic X Shadow Generations. For those of you unaware, Sonic X Shadow Generations is the most recent Sonic game that came out last month. It is a remaster of the original Sonic Generations, but then they also added in Shadow Generations, which is a whole new experience, and put them together for a complete package. Now, I've already done a review on Shadow Generations, and that's up on the channel if you want to check that out. However, I'm going to be doing a more deep dive, extensive review in the upcoming weeks, so be on the lookout for that by subscribing to the channel. This is OC Disaster Blue, where I do all of my Sonic exclusive content. Before I get into my rankings, I want to mention 3 components that I think are crucial for a boss battle, and I will use these to kind of judge where I place the Sonic X Shadow Generations bosses. 1, it has to have a good timing. If the boss fight is too short or too long, it's not that satisfying. 2, it has to be difficult, but not overbearingly difficult, where you want to throw your controller at the end. And last and most importantly, it needs to be fun. With that being said, here are my rankings for the bosses in Sonic X Shadow Generations. In last place is the final boss for Sonic Generations, Time Eater. Now, the narrative complaints I have for the Time Eater being 2 Eggmen aside, I don't think this boss fight is all that fun or difficult. I think as a final boss, you need to have a bit of a challenge, and the only challenge that this boss has is making sure you have enough rings to complete it, because the rings are scattered in very random patterns throughout the fight, and the controls of the Supersonics are not great and very slippery, so it is really hard, especially when boosting, to collect more rings to stay Supersonics. In addition, you have this mechanic where you can switch in and out of the time stream, which could have been really cool and implemented into the fight, but it really does nothing except change the camera shift. It's just kind of a lazy mechanic. In addition, every time the Time Eater is about to attack you, a side character has to talk about it. They do not shut up during this fight, and it is extremely annoying. So that's why Time Eater is number 11 on my rankings list. Unfortunately, in 10th place is the final boss for Shadow Generations. Yes, I have both the final bosses from both parts of the game at the very bottom of this list. It's just how it is. I think there's more to like about Devil Doom than there is about Time Eater, but there's still a lot of complaints there. My biggest complaint is this fight is really long. It takes a lot of phases to get through, and I believe the health bar goes all the way up at a point, and it's just a tad bit too long for my liking. I enjoy the concept of having to use the different Doom powers that you unlock throughout the campaign to fight against this boss, but it just wasn't enough to really get me excited, and some of the platforming was a little bit challenging and clunky. Didn't help that I really didn't know how to control the Doom Wings that much, but that's a skill issue. Speaking of Doom Wings, I think it would have been cooler to be Super Shadow, but I know narratively they couldn't do that because it's taking place during the time that Sonic is collecting the Chaos Emeralds in his main campaign. So they had to do something different. The Doom Wings, I don't know. They're cool as an aesthetic, but I really don't think they add anything special. And I don't think the Devil Doom fight adds really anything special. So it is a challenge of skill. It is a gauntlet of what you've done in the previous levels of Shadow Generations, but it's just not a real memorable or fun final boss. In 9th place is a boss that I always drag my feet and roll my eyes to because it's not very difficult, but it's long for no reason, and that's Egg Dragoon. It seems like Egg Dragoon is a tank of a boss and goes through like so many of the same phases but multiple times. I think if they would have cut it down a little bit more, it would have been a really fun boss fight because there's multiple different ways you can attack the Egg Dragoon. It's just a little bit too much and overstays its welcome. In 8th place, we have the Death Egg, where you play as Classic Sonic in Sonic Generations. I think the detriment to this fight is more so just the control of Classic Sonic when he's jumping and not really being able to move that well. To me, it feels it's just a little bit janky. They definitely improved upon it from the original Sonic Generations. I just think it's a little bit too clunky for the second phase of the fight specifically. I really like the first phase of this fight, but the second phase where you have to hit buttons and time it right with the bomb and then jump on the Death Egg robot's arm to go up, it just felt a little disjointed to me. It's not miserable though, but I had to put it in 8th. Number 7 would be Perfect Chaos. Now, I really like the concept of this boss fight. Instead of it just being a straight-on replica of the Sonic Adventure 2 fight against Perfect Chaos, they make it more of like a level in itself to fight him, and I really enjoy it, except I came across the problem that I don't know if any of you have as well. Let me know down in the comments. This will also be in that mega review that I'm working on. The homing attack wasn't that sensitive for me in the sense that when I was jumping towards a spring, the reticule for the homing attack sometimes just didn't register. I was going too fast, and then I would just fall, killing all momentum in the boss fight or even dying. And this happened on many levels too when I was playing the Sonic X Shadow Generations portion of Sonic Generations. So I want to know if you guys had that same problem, but because of that, and it happened multiple times, it kind of killed the fight for me, unfortunately. In 6th place, we have the Metal Sonic fight. This is a fun and quick fight. It's just not that difficult, and it's not that memorable either. So that's why it gets the number 6 spot. Number 5, I have the Shadow fight. I really like the cutscene at the very beginning of the fight to pay homage to Sonic Adventure 2, and I think it was cool that they tried to do something different compared to the fight in the original game. I don't know, it seems a little bit clunky at times, and it just feels weird boosting into meteorites to slow down Shadow and then attack him one time and he's dead. I would have liked more of a rush down race sort of thing, which it is at points, but it's really just make sure you have enough rings so you can boost enough times to get in front of Shadow. So yeah, the Shadow fight unfortunately didn't do enough for me to move it higher in the ranking. Now we're in the top. I think all these boss fights are really fun to play. There's just some that have a little bit more of an edge over the other. In 4th place is the Mephiles fight in Shadow Generations. This fight felt so good. It felt visceral. It felt like you were one-on-one-ing a really powerful enemy. You had to use the Doom powers that you just learned in order to get one over on the boss. It wasn't too long of a fight. It also wasn't too easy or too difficult. I just really enjoyed the Mephiles fight in Shadow Generations. In number 3 is a Sonic Generations boss fight, and that would be Silver the Hedgehog. They really took Silver and made him a powerhouse in this fight. They made him an absolute threat, which is completely contrasted to his 06 debut. I really like this fight. They really switch it up with patterns and being able to take him down. The only grievance I have with this fight is if you didn't have enough rings to boost at the end segment where you have the giant ball chasing after you, you just can't catch up to Silver and you're kind of stuck in a limbo. That's my only gripe with that fight. I think it's really nice, it's really good, and the difficulty is right in between being a little bit challenging and not too easy. Number 2 is Shadow Generations Metal Overlord. At first, I didn't like this boss fight, but the more I played it and tried to S-rank it, the more I realized the patterns, the design of the level itself, and really come to appreciate this boss fight. I actually think Metal Overlord is the most difficult boss out of all these on the list, but it rewards you a lot when you learn how to fight him, so that's why he's so high up on the list. You're navigating through a level while fighting this boss, and if you do things correctly and accurately, you can skip phases, which I really appreciate. So if you know how to play the boss fight well, it's a really fun and adrenaline-seeking time. And in 1st place, I have the Bio Lizard from Shadow Generations. They did everything they could to make this boss fight amazing. They take a lot of homage from the first game, but they also add in new phases and new ways to attack him. It's just a really fun time, and I really enjoy replaying this boss fight over and over again and finding cool ways to attack him. Of course, you start off with the first phase where it's just like you're playing Sonic Adventure 2, but right after that, they just change everything. He gets wings, he can fly around, you can use chaos control at different parts to attack him at different angles, and I just really think they did a really good job of taking an old iconic fight and boss fight and bring it over to this modern iteration. So yeah, I can't praise it enough. So that was my ranking of the 11 bosses in Sonic X Shadow Generations. What did you guys think? Let me know down below if you agree or disagree. I want to see your lists. Where do you put these bosses? I'm super interested. Like I said, I'm working on a very in-depth review, so be on the lookout for that later. I also have a bunch of other stuff on the channel that's all Sonic related. Sonic Movie 3, some Sonic X Shadow Generations walkthroughs and Let's Plays. I also have a series where I'm talking about remaking Sonic Forces. I really enjoy Sonic Forces as a concept. I just think they executed the game poorly. So there's 2 episodes of that series out now, and I'm working on the 3rd one as we speak. So be sure to check those out and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it, and like the video if you enjoyed it. I'm OC Disaster. Hope you have a super Sonic rest of your day. See ya.